The night was silent, and the stars above looked brighter than ever. A small transport ship moved slowly across the edge of an unknown galaxy. Inside the ship, a young human man named Daniel sat in the pilot's chair. He was not a hero, not a soldier, not a great leader. He was only a traveler, curious and restless, always searching for something new. But tonight, he felt something strange in the air, as if the stars themselves were whispering secrets he could not hear. Suddenly, alarms began to beep inside the ship. The screens flashed red, warning of an unknown energy ahead. Daniel grabbed the controls, but the ship shook violently. A wave of light pulled the vessel forward, faster and faster. Before he could react, everything turned white. The stars disappeared, and silence filled the cabin. When the light faded, Daniel realized he was no longer in familiar space. He had crossed into a place unknown. Dark clouds floated like smoke across the void. And in the distance, a giant structure appeared. It was not a planet, not a moon, but something built by hands, by a colossal palace floating between the stars, glowing with silver fire. Daniel's heart raced. His first thought was fear. His second thought was wonder. He whispered to himself, "What is this place?" The ship was pulled gently by an invisible force. Slowly, it descended toward the shining palace. Daniel tried to fight it, but the controls no longer answered him. It was as if someone, or something, wanted him to come. The ship landed on a glowing platform. The airlock hissed open, releasing cool air filled with the scent of flowers. Daniel stepped out carefully, his boots clicking on smooth, silver ground. Tall towers surrounded him, carved with symbols he could not read. Strange lights floated in the air like fireflies made of crystal. The place was beautiful, yet too perfect. It felt alive, as if the palace itself was watching him. Then footsteps echoed from the grand staircase ahead. Daniel froze, his eyes wide. From the shadows, a figure appeared. It was a girl, but not a human girl. Her skin glowed faintly, soft and pale like moonlight. Her long hair shimmered with silver strands, moving as if touched by the wind. Her eyes were large, shining with violet fire. She wore a flowing dress made of threads that looked like starlight, and on her head a delicate crown rested. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He was looking at someone royal, an alien princess. She stopped a few steps away and stared at him. Her gaze was strong, yet her lips trembled as if she wanted to speak. Daniel felt the weight of the moment. He wanted to say something smart, something brave, something respectful. But his nervousness betrayed him, and before he could stop himself, he said jokingly, "Hey, babe." For a second, silence ruled the palace. Daniel wanted to punch himself. What kind of idiot calls a glowing alien princess babe? But then, something impossible happened. The princess's cheeks turned pink, her glowing eyes softened, and she whispered, almost shyly, "Yes, baby." Daniel froze. His mind went blank. He thought maybe he had misheard her, but the words echoed in his ears again. "Yes, baby." Why did she say that? Why did she blush? Why did her voice sound so serious? Questions filled Daniel's mind. He laughed nervously, trying to play it off. But inside, his heart was pounding. Something about her response was not normal. It was as if she had been waiting for him, as if his joke was more than a joke, as if destiny itself had written this line long before he arrived. The princess stepped closer. Her eyes searched his face. She raised her hand slowly, almost touching his chest. Her voice was soft, but carried a strange power. "You came," she whispered. "I thought it was only a dream, but you came." Daniel's throat went dry. He wanted to ask 100 questions. Who are you? Why am I here? What do you mean? But before he could speak, the ground beneath them trembled. The silver lights flickered, and a distant sound like thunder echoed through the palace. The princess gasped, looking over her shoulder. Her face changed from shy and gentle to sharp and afraid. "They know you are here," she whispered quickly. "You must come with me, or they will find you." Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run back, to his ship. But another voice inside him said no. He had stepped into something greater than himself. The alien princess, the glowing palace, her strange words. This was not an accident. Something was pulling him deeper. Something dangerous. Something powerful. And maybe something meant to be. The princess grabbed his hand. Her fingers were warm, almost human. Without waiting, she pulled him toward the staircase. Daniel stumbled after her, his heart still confused. In his mind, one thought echoed louder than the alarms, louder than the thunder. Why did she say, "Yes, baby"? And what did it mean for him, for her, for both their worlds? The grand staircase stretched upward like a path of light. Daniel followed the princess, his boots echoing softly against the silver floor. Her hand never left his, warm and firm, pulling him with strange urgency. His heart beat faster with every step, not just from fear, but from the mystery that wrapped around her. She looked fragile yet powerful, like a storm hidden inside calm waters, and Daniel could not stop thinking about the moment before, the words she had whispered. "Yes, baby." Why would a princess of another world say something so human, so personal, so intimate? At the top of the staircase, great doors opened on their own. They entered a vast hall filled with glowing pillars. Strange symbols floated in the air, twisting like fireflies made of light. Daniel's eyes widened. He felt small, like an ant walking through the halls of gods. The princess turned. To him, her eyes softer now, though shadows of worry still lingered. "You do not know who I am," she said quietly. Her voice echoed like music across the shining walls. "I am Princess Serenia, daughter of the celestial throne, heir to the empire of Asterion." Her words carried weight, power, and sorrow. All at once, Daniel blinked, trying to process. He had never heard of this empire, never read it in any star maps, but the way she stood, tall and proud, made him believe every word. "And you," she continued, her eyes glowing brighter. "You should not be here, yet the prophecy told me you would come." Daniel tilted his head, confused. "Prophecy?" he muttered, his voice shaky. Serenia stepped closer, her gaze locked on his. 1,000 cycles. "Ago, my people recorded a vision," she explained. "A human, one from the distant world of Sol, would cross the barrier of stars. He would arrive when the empire trembled, when enemies closed in, and when the throne was weak." Her hand trembled as she raised it toward his chest. "And he would speak the words of union. The words only. Destined lovers could share." Daniel felt the air grow colder. He swallowed, remembering his careless joke. "Hey, babe." Those were the words. The prophecy had tied his foolish humor to something cosmic. "Wait," he said quickly. "You're telling me. Your people saw me in a vision, and because I said those stupid words, you think I'm, what, your chosen one?" The princess did not flinch. Her eyes glimmered with something deeper than belief. "Not think," she whispered. "I know." Her cheeks glowed faintly, a blush that seemed strange against her royal presence. "You spoke them, and I answered as the prophecy said I must." "Yes, baby," she repeated softly, almost like a vow. Daniel's head spun. This was madness. How could an alien empire across galaxies know about humans, about him, about something as silly as a joke? But part of him felt the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders. He was no hero, no warrior. But in this place, he had been chosen. And Serenia looked at him as if the entire universe balanced on his existence before he could ask more. The hall trembled. The glowing pillars flickered, and a cold wind swept through. Serenia's face grew tense, her hand gripping his tighter. "They are coming," she said sharply. "My father's council. They will not accept you. Not yet." She pulled him toward a hidden passage behind the throne. The walls opened like liquid silver, revealing a narrow tunnel. As they walked quickly inside, Daniel whispered, "Why hide me, if I'm so important to your prophecy?" Serenia's voice dropped, heavy with sorrow. "Because prophecy does not rule the council, power does. To them you are not destiny, you are danger." Her words sank into Daniel's chest like stone. He had thought maybe this was a strange dream. Maybe he would wake up on Earth. But now he realized the truth. This was real, and he was already caught in something far greater than himself. The tunnel led to a secret chamber, small and glowing with soft blue light. Inside, strange books floated in the air, pages turning on their own. At the center, a round pool shimmered with liquid stars. Serenia stopped at the pool, her reflection bending with the light. She whispered an ancient word and images formed on the surface. Daniel leaned closer, his breath catching in his throat. The pool showed visions, great fleets of alien ships, firing beams of light across black skies, worlds burning, empires collapsing, and at the center of the vision, he saw himself, Daniel, standing beside Serenia, holding her hand as fire rained around them. His heart nearly stopped. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low. Serenia looked at him with both fear and hope. "This is the war to come," she said, "and this is why you are here." Daniel stepped back, shaking his head. No, I didn't ask for this. I'm not a soldier, I'm just—" Her hand touched his shoulder, stopping him. Her eyes were soft, shining with something almost human. "You may not believe, but destiny does not wait for belief," she whispered. "Whether you want it or not, you are bound to me, to this fight, to this future." Silence hung heavy in the chamber. Daniel felt trapped, yet strangely connected. Serenia stood before him, the alien princess with violet eyes. Her voice broke the silence, soft but unshakable. "The prophecy called you my partner," she said. "And now, I call you the same." Daniel's chest tightened. He had no answer, no escape. Only the echo of her words, only the image of their joined hands against a storm of stars, and the haunting memory of her whisper, "Yes, baby." The secret chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the glowing pool. Daniel stood frozen, his reflection shimmering with Serenia's beside him. The vision of war still burned in his mind. Fleets of fire and endless destruction. He wanted to deny it, to laugh and call it fantasy, but the princess's eyes held him still. They were eyes of someone who carried truth and also fear. Serenia's hand tightened on his arm. "There is something you must understand," she whispered. "My people are not united." Her voice trembled, though her face remained calm. "The empire is strong in name, but inside it is divided, broken by greed and hunger for power." She turned toward the glowing books floating above them. "The council rules beside my father, and they see me as a tool, not a leader. And now with you here, they will see danger." Daniel swallowed, his chest heavy. He had never thought himself important, but now he was caught between alien, politics, and prophecy. Still, his human instincts pushed him to ask, "Why am I such a threat to them if they believe in power? Why fear me?" Serenia's lips curved into a bitter smile. "Because power loves no prophecy," she said softly, "and prophecy promises change. To them, you are not a savior. You are a weapon they cannot control." Before Daniel could answer, the chamber's walls shook violently. A crackle of light burst across the ceiling and the glowing books scattered. Serenia's eyes widened. "They have found us," she whispered sharply. From the shadows of the tunnel behind them, armored figures stepped into the chamber. They were tall, their bodies covered in dark silver armor with sharp edges like blades. Their helmets glowed red, and their long spears hummed with energy. Daniel's breath caught. These were not guards, not protectors. They moved with lethal purpose, like assassins. Serenia pulled him behind her, her hand raised. A shield of violet light burst around them as the first spear struck. The chamber roared with sound, sparks flying against the magical barrier. Daniel stumbled back, his heart pounding. He had no weapon, no training, nothing. All he could do was watch as Serenia faced the attackers. Her voice rang out like a command. "Back away, shadows of the council." But the soldiers did not obey. One of them spoke, his voice metallic. "The council does not need prophecy. The council needs control." The spears struck again, harder. Serenya's shield flickered, the glow fading. Daniel felt panic rise, his survival instincts screaming. He looked around the chamber, desperate for anything. On the floor near the pool lay a broken piece of one of the glowing books. It looked sharp, almost like a blade. Without thinking, he grabbed it. His hand burned as he held it, but he clenched, tighter. When the next soldier lunged, Daniel swung the shard with all his strength. The strike was clumsy, human and desperate, but the shard sliced through the glowing armor like glass through paper. The soldier fell back with a roar, his spear clattering to the ground. The others paused, their red eyes fixed on Daniel. Serenya gasped, shock flashing across her face. You touched the Asterian shard," she whispered. "That should burn you. It should destroy you." But Daniel's hand held it firmly, though his skin glowed faintly where it touched him. The shard was alive, and it had chosen not to harm him. The assassins recovered quickly, circling them again. Serenya's shield broke with a loud crack. Energy exploded, throwing her back against the wall. Daniel rushed to her side, his chest tight. "Are you all right?" he asked, panic in his voice. Serenya groaned. Pushing herself up, her violet eyes met his, fierce even in pain. "You must run," she whispered. But Daniel shook his head, holding the shard tightly. "No, if I run, they'll kill you." The soldiers lunged again. Daniel swung the shard, sparks exploding as it met their spears. He moved on instinct, no training, no skill, just raw human will. Each strike echoed louder, the shard glowing brighter. The assassin staggered, unprepared for his strength. Serenya rose to her feet, her hands glowing with violet fire. Together they fought, human and princess side by side. The chamber shook as energy clashed against prophecy. At last, the remaining assassins retreated. Into the shadows, their leader's voice echoed coldly as they vanished. "This is not the end, human. The council watches and the empire does not forgive." Silence returned, broken only by Daniel's heavy breathing. He dropped the shard onto the floor, his hand trembling. The glow on his skin slowly faded, but the burning sensation remained. Serenya stepped closer, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. "You fought like no human I have ever seen," she whispered. "The shard accepted you. It has never accepted any of my people." Daniel shook his head, wiping sweat from his brow. "I don't understand any of this," he muttered. "I'm not special, I'm just me." But Serenya's face grew solemn, her words heavy. "No, Daniel, you are more than you believe. The prophecy is unfolding, and tonight the shadows came to stop it. If they fear you now, it means you are already changing the future." Daniel stared at her, his chest still rising and falling with uneven breaths. He wanted to deny it, to reject the weight she placed on him, but deep inside, a small flame had lit. Not of destiny, not of prophecy, but of survival, courage, and something else. The memory of her blush, her whisper, her eyes when she said, "Yes, baby." The shadows had failed tonight, but their presence was clear. They would come again, stronger, more ruthless. And Daniel realized he could no longer pretend he was just a lost traveler. The Empire's war had already reached him, and enemies now waited in the darkness, sharpening their blades for him. The chamber lay in ruins, its glowing pillars cracked, the air filled with smoke and fading sparks. Daniel stood beside Serenya, both breathing hard, their eyes still fixed on the shadows that had vanished. The silence after the battle felt heavier than the fight itself. But Daniel's mind was not on the danger, it was on her, the way she had fought beside him, the way her hand trembled when she touched his. For the first time since arriving, he realized something. The princess was not untouchable, not unshakable. She was vulnerable, and she trusted him. Serenya lowered her head, her crown glimmering faintly in the dim light. "They will not stop," she said softly. "The council will not forgive me for bringing you here, and they will not forgive you for surviving." Daniel frowned, his voice low. "Why does it feel like you're protecting me more than yourself?" Her violet eyes lifted to his, and, for a brief moment, she looked less like a princess and more like a girl. "Because destiny bound us together and because I do not want to lose you," she whispered. The words hung between them, warm and dangerous. Daniel's heart skipped, and he looked away, his chest heavy with emotions he did not understand. This was madness, he thought. He was just a human traveler, and she was an alien princess. But every time he looked at her, something deep inside told him this bond was real. They left the ruined chamber through another hidden passage. The tunnel led them outside, where the night sky stretched wide. The palace gardens opened before them, glowing trees bending under silver fruit, flowers that floated like stars above the ground. The air smelled sweet, almost unreal. Daniel stepped forward in awe, his eyes wide. "This place, it's beautiful," he whispered. Serenia smiled faintly, watching his wonder. "It is the secret heart of the palace, a place where no council member dares to come," she said. "It was my mother's garden, and she shared it only with me." They walked slowly through the glowing paths, their steps soft. Daniel's hand brushed against a flower that hummed with light. Serenia watched him carefully, her voice soft. "I should not be here with you," she admitted. "My people forbid bonds with outsiders, especially humans." Her words struck Daniel like a stone. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Because they fear what they cannot control," she answered. "They fear love that crosses worlds, because love cannot be ruled by council or throne." Daniel's chest tightened. For the first time, he felt the true danger. Not just assassins, not just shadows, but the law itself. If anyone discovered them, he would not live, and she would lose everything. Still, he could not stop the question that escaped his lips. "And what do you feel?" he asked. Her steps slowed. Her violet eyes glowed under the garden lights. "I feel," she whispered, her cheeks faintly pink, "that my heart is no longer mine alone." Daniel's breath caught. The world around them seemed to fade. The garden lights dimmed, the silence stretched. He wanted to step closer, to take her hand, but doubt held him still. She was a princess. He was nothing. Yet the look in her eyes told him he was wrong. He was not nothing. To her, before he could speak, Serenia suddenly turned, her face growing tense. In the distance, voices echoed. Armored footsteps approached. She grabbed his arm quickly, pulling him into the shadows of the glowing trees. Her voice was urgent. "They cannot find us together," she whispered. "If they do, they will call me traitor and they will kill you." Daniel's pulse raced. The footsteps grew louder. The council guards passed through the garden, their armor glowing faintly. Daniel held his breath, his body pressed against the silver bark of a tree. Serenia was close, too close. Her hand on his chest, her breath soft against his ear. Every sound, every second felt endless. When the guards finally left, she did not move. Her violet eyes stayed on his, and the space between them disappeared. For a moment, the world was silent again. Serenia spoke, her voice trembling. "This bond is forbidden, but I cannot break it." Her words were both a confession and a vow. Daniel's heart pounded, his voice rough. "Then don't break it," he whispered back. Her blush deepened, and for the first time she smiled with no fear. "Yes, baby," she whispered softly, repeating the words that had begun it all. The garden seemed to glow brighter around them, as if the stars themselves approved. But the moment of peace was fragile. The shadows of the council still hunted them, and the empire was still a storm ready to break. Serenia stepped back, her face serious again. "We cannot stay here," she said firmly. "I must show you the truth of this world, the parts no outsider has seen." Daniel nodded, his chest still heavy from her words. He did not know what lay ahead, but he knew he would not leave her side, no matter the cost. Their bond was forbidden, dangerous, and fragile. Yet it was real, more real than anything he had known before. And as they walked deeper into the glowing garden, he realized something. This was not just her secret world anymore. It was theirs. The garden's glow faded behind them as Serenia led Daniel into another hidden passage. The air grew colder, the walls darker, and the sound of distant voices echoed like whispers of thunder. Daniel could feel the change in her pace, faster and sharper, as if danger itself followed close behind. He finally asked, his voice quiet. "Where are we going?" Her violet eyes flickered back to him, steady but heavy with worry. "To the council chambers," she answered. "You must see the truth for yourself. The war is already here." The passage opened into a high balcony. Below them stretched a vast hall filled with alien figures. Dozens of council members stood in rows, their robes shimmering like flowing metal, their crowns sharp as blades. At the center, a tall throne gleamed under a silver light. An older man sat upon it, his face stern and carved by time. His crown was larger, heavier, a mark of his rule. Serenya's father, the Emperor, Daniel froze. Every sound in the chamber shook his chest. The council was speaking in a language he could barely understand, yet the tone was clear. Anger, fear, and the sound of war. Holographic maps flickered in the air, showing fleets of enemy ships surrounding, border worlds, planets burning, colonies destroyed, soldiers falling. The Empire was under attack and the council was restless. One counselor raised his voice. "The enemies grow bold because we are weak," he shouted. "They know the throne is vulnerable. They smell fear," another added sharply. "And now a human is among us, an omen of chaos, a distraction from the war." Daniel stiffened, realizing they were speaking about him. He leaned closer to Serenya, whispering, "They already know I'm here." She nodded, her face pale but determined. "Yes, and soon. They will decide your fate." The Emperor raised his hand, silencing the chamber. His voice was deep and powerful, carrying through the hall. "The war is not the time for prophecy," he declared. "We must crush our enemies with strength, not chase dreams of destiny." His words struck Daniel like a blade. The Emperor, her own father, did not believe. Or perhaps he feared what belief would bring. Serenya's hand clenched the railing tightly. Her eyes filled with quiet pain. Daniel saw it, the battle inside her, loyalty to her father versus the truth of her heart. She whispered softly, almost only to herself, "If they refuse the prophecy, then they will refuse me too." The council chamber erupted again. Some argued for war, others for diplomacy, but all voices carried one message: fear. And behind that fear, Daniel saw something worse: greed. Each counselor spoke not for the empire, but for their own power, their own gain. And in that moment, Daniel understood. This was not just a war against outside enemies, it was a war already rotting inside the empire itself. Suddenly, the maps in the air shifted. A messenger entered, falling to his knees before the throne. His voice was frantic. "The Dravak fleet has crossed the border," he cried. "They are burning the colonies at Orath Prime." The hall fell silent, the words like fire on dry wood. Then came the roar, of voices again, louder, desperate, angry. "The war has begun," one shouted. "We must send the armada," another yelled. "Crush them now," a third demanded. Serenya turned to Daniel, her face pale. "This is it," she whispered. "The war drums have begun." Daniel's heart pounded. He had never been in a war, never even held a weapon until the shard. But he saw the truth in her eyes. The empire was on the edge of collapse, and somehow, he was now part of it. The Emperor raised his hand again. "We march to war," he declared. "Our fleets will strike, our enemies will fall." The council roared in approval, their voices shaking the chamber. But Serenya did not cheer. Her eyes narrowed with worry. "They do not see," she muttered. "They do not see that their pride will destroy us." Daniel touched her shoulder gently. "What do we do?" he asked. She turned to him, her voice low but steady. "We must act before the council destroys everything. They will not listen to me, but they might listen to you." Daniel shook his head quickly. "Me? I'm not a leader, I'm just—" But she cut him off, her gaze firm. "You are the one the prophecy chose, and now the people must see you." The weight of her words pressed on him. He wanted to refuse, to run, to hide. But he remembered the shard in his hand, the assassins in the shadows. the fire in Serenya's eyes. He could not escape anymore. The war had already found him. The sound of war horns echoed through the palace, long and deep, shaking the walls. Daniel looked out across the vast chamber, seeing the faces of the council, the emperor, the map of burning worlds. And for the first time he realized something. This was not only their war, it was his too. If the empire fell, Serenya would fall. If she fell, so would he. Serenya whispered softly beside him. The council will never give us their blessing, but destiny does not ask permission. Her hand brushed his, warm and trembling. And in that moment Daniel knew the bond between them had grown even stronger. A forbidden bond, born of prophecy and choice, but also a bond forged in the fire of war. The drums of war beat louder, echoing across the palace. Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the stars shown in the holograms. He had no plan, no training, no power, but he had one promise: he would not let her fight alone. The war horn still echoed through the halls, long and deep like thunder rolling across endless skies. Daniel stood beside Serenya on the balcony, his eyes locked on the holograms of burning worlds. Every heartbeat reminded him that this was no dream, no illusion. This was war, and it was already here. The council below argued louder, demanding fleets, demanding vengeance, demanding power. But not once did Daniel hear the word peace, not once did he hear the word hope. Serenya's hand tightened around his, her eyes glowing with fear and fire. They will send fleets blindly, she whispered. They will march into the Dravak trap and countless lives will be lost. Daniel swallowed, his voice low. Then we stop them. She turned to him, surprise flickering in her gaze. You speak as if it is simple, she said, almost bitterly. But Daniel shook his head, his jaw tight. No, I speak as if there is no choice. The chamber below roared again, the emperor raising his voice above the chaos. Prepare the armada, he commanded. Strike the enemy before they strike us again, the council cheered, their voices like knives cutting through the air. But Serenya leaned close to Daniel, her voice sharp. If they march like this, we will lose. I must act. She pulled him away from the balcony, leading him through narrow corridors until they reached a command platform. Giant windows opened to the stars. Fleets of shining ships lined the darkness outside. Silver hulls, glowing engines, weapons primed. Daniel stared in awe, the scale beyond anything he had ever seen. It was beauty and terror at once, the power of 1,000 civilizations ready to kill or be killed. Serenya's fingers moved across, glowing panels, symbols shifting under her touch. The fleet will obey me if only for a moment, she whispered. But I cannot hold them alone. If you stand with me, maybe they will listen. Daniel's chest tightened. He was no commander, no strategist, yet somehow every eye would soon turn to him. Still he nodded. Tell me what to do. Before she could answer, alarms screamed across the platform. The stars outside shifted as shadows appeared. Dozens of Dravak warships uncloaked, black and jagged like predators in the night. They opened fire, beams of red light slashing across the void. The Empire's fleets scattered in shock. Explosions. Flashing like dying stars, the war had not waited, it had already begun. Serenya gasped, her eyes widening. They've come too soon. Her voice cracked with fear, but she steadied herself quickly. Daniel, stay with me. Whatever happens, do not let go. He gripped her hand tightly, nodding. I won't. The first wave struck, shaking the palace as enemy fire grazed its shields. Daniel stumbled but stood firm, his eyes fixed on the battle outside. He saw ships burn, lives vanish in light, and for the first time he felt the weight of war in his chest. It was not glory, it was horror. And yet he also felt something else, a fire inside him that refused to let it end like this. Serenya opened a channel to the Empire's fleet, her voice ringing clear. This is Princess Serenya, she declared. Do not scatter. Do not fight. Blindly form wings, protect the core, and strike with unity. The soldiers listened, her authority undeniable. The ships began to move, slowly at first, then with purpose, forming tight patterns against the Dravak onslaught. Daniel stepped forward, his voice rising without thought. "And listen," he added, his words raw but fierce. "You fight for more than thrones, more than councils. You fight for your homes, your families, your people." The channel fell silent, thousands of ears hearing his human voice. "I am no prince, no general," he continued, "but I am here standing with you, and I will not let this empire fall." His words carried across the fleets like a spark through dry wood, and suddenly voices answered, cheers rising even above the storm of war. The Dravak ships pressed harder, but the empire fought back with unity it had not shown in years. Serenia turned to him, her eyes glowing with pride. "You spoke like a leader," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "I just spoke like a man who refuses to lose." The battle raged, ships colliding in light and fire. Daniel and Serenia watched in horror as the largest Dravak warship emerged, its shadow covering the stars. Its cannons glowed with energy enough to destroy the palace itself. Serenia's face went pale. "If it fires, we are finished." Without thinking, Daniel grabbed the shard still at his side, the same one he had used against the assassins. It burned in his hand, glowing brighter than before. He raised it toward the window, his voice raw. "Then we stop it." The shard pulsed, light bursting outward. The energy spread like a wave, touching the Empire's fleet, strengthening their shields, their weapons, their resolve. The soldiers gasped across the channels, calling it a miracle. Serenia's eyes widened in awe. "The shard listens to you," she whispered. "It chooses you." The Empire's fleet surged forward, striking the Dravak flagship with fury. Explosions tore across its hull, fire blooming in the darkness. The giant ship cracked, then shattered, its pieces falling like burning meteors. The Dravak scattered, retreating into the shadows of space. The battle was won, but the cost was heavy. The void outside glittered with debris, the graves of countless lives. Daniel dropped to his knees, the shard fading in his hand. His body shook, his breath ragged. Serenia knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "You saved us," she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Daniel shook his head weakly. "No, we saved each other." Her eyes softened, her hand brushing his cheek. "You are not just prophecy anymore," she whispered. "You are my partner, my bond, my hope." Her lips trembled as she said it, and before she could pull away, Daniel whispered back, "And you are mine." For a moment, amidst the ashes of war, there was only them, a human and an alien princess bound not by prophecy alone but by choice. The battle for two worlds had begun, but so had something even stronger, a love that no council, no enemy, no war could break. The battlefield outside the palace was quiet. Now Dravak ships burned in the distance, drifting like dying stars across the endless dark. The Empire's fleet hovered in formation, scarred but still alive. Inside the command chamber, Daniel leaned against the railing, his body weak, the shard dim in his hand. Serenia stood close, her eyes fixed on him with worry and pride. The doors burst open, and members of the council stormed in. Their robes shimmered with anger, their eyes sharp with fear. One of them shouted, his voice echoing, "This human has brought chaos to our empire." Another added, "He is no savior. He is a weapon we cannot control." Their voices rose together. "Remove him, exile him, or destroy him." Daniel lifted his head, too tired to argue. He wanted to laugh at the irony. He had fought for their survival, and still, they saw him as an enemy. But before he could speak, Serenia stepped forward, her crown shining under the pale lights. Her voice rang out like a bell, firm and unshakable. "If you call him enemy, then you call me enemy too." The chamber fell silent. The council stared at her in disbelief. One voice finally hissed, "You would risk your throne for him." Her violet eyes blazed as she answered, "I would risk everything." Daniel's chest tightened at her words. She was the daughter of the emperor, heir to a throne of stars. And yet in this moment she stood for him, not for power, not for law, but for choice, he whispered softly, almost to himself. "She doesn't have to do this." But deep inside, he knew she would never turn back. The Emperor rose slowly from his throne, his eyes fixed on his daughter. His voice was heavy, like stone carried by the years. "You defy, the council, you defy your father for this human." Serenia stood tall, her voice steady. "I do not defy, father, I choose." Her words cut through the hall sharper than any blade. For a moment the Emperor said nothing. Only silence stretched like an endless void. Then, footsteps echoed from behind. Soldiers entered. Weary from battle, their armor dented, their faces scarred. They bowed their heads not to the Emperor, not to the council, but to Serenia. One soldier's voice broke the silence. "She saved us, and he saved us too." Another added, "We saw the shard's light. We saw him stand with us." Their voices grew, spreading through the chamber like fire. "The human fights for us. Let him stay." The council's anger wavered. Their fear cracked under the weight of the people's voices. And for the first time, Daniel felt a shift. The council was powerful, but the people were watching, and the people believed. The Emperor's gaze softened slightly, though his tone stayed hard. "The Empire is fragile," he said. "We face enemies outside and inside, and now, you ask me to allow something forbidden." His eyes moved to Daniel, steady and unreadable. "Tell me, human, why should I let you live beside my daughter?" Daniel's throat tightened. He had no perfect words, no grand speech prepared, but he spoke honestly, his voice rough but clear. "Because I didn't come here to rule, I didn't come here to take, I came here by accident." He paused, his eyes locking on Serenia's. "But now I stay by choice. I will fight for her, not for power, not for prophecy, but because she matters to me." The chamber was silent again. Even the council could not speak against such words. The Emperor studied him for a long time, his expression unreadable. Finally, he turned away, his voice low. "Perhaps the stars have chosen differently than we imagined." He raised his hand, silencing the council before they could argue. "This human may stay, but know this. If you betray this empire, your life ends." Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand," he said simply. For him, no threat could outweigh what he had already chosen. Serenia's shoulders eased, relief flickering across her face. But she stepped closer to Daniel, her hand brushing against his. Her voice was soft, only for him. "You are not alone anymore." He met her gaze, his chest tight but warm. "And neither are you," he whispered back. The war was not over. The Dravak would return, the council would plot, and the shadows would rise again. But in that moment, Daniel felt something stronger than fear. Hope, a bond forbidden by law but blessed by fire, a love born in the middle of war. He realized then that this was more than survival, more than prophecy. This was the beginning of something new. The chamber doors opened once more, and beyond them, the stars stretched wide, endless and waiting. Daniel and Serenia stood side by side, their hands clasped. For the first time, they did not walk alone. The people bowed as they passed, whispers spreading through the palace like a quiet storm. "The human and the princess," they said. "The prophecy lives." Daniel smiled faintly, his voice low but steady. "Hey, babe," he said, almost teasing. Serenia blushed softly, her eyes glowing with joy. "Yes, baby," she replied, her voice filled with promise, and together they stepped into the starlight. Not as strangers, not as enemies, but as partners bound by fate and choice. The war drums would beat again. But now they would face them together. A new beginning had arrived, and this time it belonged to both their worlds.